Good afternoon, everyone. It's Brendan from Five Star Conversations, where we talk to hoteliers making an impact on the industry. And today I have the pleasure of talking with Gavin Fall. Welcome, Gavin.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
Thank you, Gavin. What we'll do is we always kick off by reading the person that we're talking to's bio, just so people get an understanding. Gavin's a fellow member of the Chartered Accountants of both Australia and New Zealand. He's a fellow of the Hong Kong Institute of Certified Public Accountants. He's a fellow member of the Certified Public Accountants of Australia. He's a fellow of the Institute of Directors and a certified director of Institute of Directors. He's a Justice of the Peace in New Zealand. He graduated originally from Victoria University. Is that with a Bachelor of Commerce and Accounting?
Yep.
I think. Yep. Most importantly, Gavin has 40 years of experience in hotel management and operations and corporate development with groups like the Peninsula Group in Hong Kong, Kingsgate International, and of course, Swiss. Gavin was the former Chief Executive Officer of Kingsgate Corporation Limited, which was a publicly listed hotel owning and management company in Australia and New Zealand. And many people would be very familiar with what was the Hyatt Kingsgate in King's Cross, just near the Coca-Cola sign there, which was a landmark for many years. Gavin's also a director and investor in a number of private agricultural and property management and consulting companies in Australia and New Zealand. And he's a major shareholder and the managing director of Fall Farms Limited, a 400-hectare, 1,200 cow award-winning dairy unit in North Taranaki, New Zealand, which we'll talk about, but I think that is the background that you've got here today. Gavin's also a supporter of East Taranaki Environment Trust, and my pronunciation of Maori's not great, but the Nagatari
Rahiri.
Okay, management committee. And probably most importantly, Gavin, I didn't realize this, but you founded the International Hotel School in Plymouth, which is the top hotel school in New Zealand. And you were also part of the founding of the Blue Mountains International Hotel School in Lura.
I joined Lura 2 years after it started, yes, but I'm with the original partners, yes.
But another famous school. You've also developed a hotel school in Canberra and hotel schools in China, in Tianjin and Changshu. And you've worked with Switzerland hotel schools, and you've sponsored and developed a hotel school in Cambodia. So very impressive. Welcome again, Gavin.
Thank you. Thank you.
Gavin, the first question I always like to start with is, how did you get into the hotel industry? And did you choose it, or did it choose you?
That's like asking why did you marry your wife?
We can talk about that after hotels.
No, probably not a great advisor in that department, but I'm still with my first wife, so that's pretty good going in my industry. I worked in the early 70s in Hong Kong with KPMG, and one of their clients was the Peninsula Group, and they were looking for a financial controller for 2 of their hotels, and that's how I started off in 1975.
Okay.
Yes, I chose them. I was the only non-Swiss, non-German member of their executive team.
Yes, yeah, it was very, in those days, yeah, German and Swiss hoteliers were very common.
And of course, the Peninsula Hotel is the best hotel in the world, even today.
Yep.
I'm a little bit biased, but that's my opinion.
And then obviously you were with Kingsgate and you founded Swiss Bell. When was that?
Yeah, Kingsgate was a public company which was owned by Chinese from Singapore, and that's how I got involved in Australia and New Zealand. Then my boss retired from Peninsula Group, a guy called Peter Gauci, a doyen of the hotel industry, and he set up Swiss Bell Hotel International in 1987. And I joined in 1990. And I started working in Hong Kong again, because I'd been in Hong Kong for many years. And I lived in New Zealand, so I was an astronaut hotelier. I used to fly in for 3 weeks a month to help get this fledgling company going. I worked for Peter Gauci for 3 months for nothing, because I wasn't sure whether I could handle this flying in and flying out approach to business.
Yep.
And it worked well. And 10 years later, I bought the company.
Wow. And so today, Swiss Bell is how many properties?
We've probably got 135 hotels and projects. We're just looking at some major acquisitions in Asia, which will take us up to probably 250 hotels by the beginning of 2025. Yeah, we're on the move. Yeah.
That's awesome. And it's a very much a family business because obviously Matthew,
Well,
Oliver, and Edward
Edward,
are all involved as well.
well, I had three sons, and they went off and did their own lives. And Matthew was in Japan and Russia. Oliver was in London and New York, and Edward was in Hong Kong and Papua New Guinea. And probably because I was not home very often when they're growing up, they thought, well, the only way to get to know me was to join me. And so after their 10 years career somewhere else, they came back one by one and said, hey, let's get on board. I'm not sure they might have a few regrets now, especially during COVID, but it is a challenge, but they're doing well, very, very well.
That's fantastic. That's great. I'm sure over your time, you've got a lot of them, but is there a funny or a memorable story from the early part of your career that sort of cemented your love of hospitality, maybe?
It's hard to think of what is the real funny parts of my career. It's because it's been a pretty serious career. I can't really think of any real funny story, or maybe later on. Give me time to think, okay?
All right, understand, no problems.
But you know, you have to love hospitality because otherwise it'll drive you crazy.
I totally agree. It's interesting because I've found my way into hospitality. I didn't say I tried to get out, went a slightly different path for a year or two, maybe not even that, but found myself drawn back in very quickly. So I think it's just something that you're drawn to.
It's
And
like it's like a drug. You can't get away from it, can you?
a little bit like that.
Yeah.
It's got some good and bad consequences too, right?
Yeah.
Then
Yeah,
do
well,
that.
I'll just think of a case when I was in the Peninsula Group. We're restructuring our whole staffing, and it was in the 70s, we had staff numbers were unlimited. So we did a whole study of everybody. We did a measurement of their importance to the company.
Yep.
And you wouldn't guess who came out as the most important employee in the company.
Yourself.
Well, no, not quite. It was the drivers of the Rolls Royce at the Peninsula.
Really?
They were obviously driving a very valuable car, but they also had the first and the last impression with
Yep.
the guest, and they came out as being the most important employee that you had. So you know, it's interesting.
It makes sense actually that because that, as they say, the first and the last impression are particularly the last because it can smooth over what may have been some difficulty during the stay if that last impression is actually good. So,
Absolutely, yes, yes.
and to me that, and I've had lots of conversations, we might even talk about it later, where the industry is heading, from people talking about, getting rid of the front desk. I think we are and always will be a people industry. And that comment you've just made cements the fact that the driver of those cars was critical to the guest experience. Yeah.
Yes.
Gavin, from an inspirational point of view, where do you derive your inspiration from? Is it from yourself? Is it from outside the industry? Are there people within the industry that you get inspiration from?
Inspiration is an interesting word. You know, a staff member said to me, you know, you have to inspire me. And really, if you can't inspire yourself, you will not be a success. Okay. So inspiration comes from inside you. However, it's your parents have a huge impact. My parents had a huge impact on me, and I grew up in a very simple life in the country with probably from a relatively, to be honest, a poor background. Okay, we just ran a little grocery shop selling bread and milk to the neighbors, and that's where I started in a village of 200 people.
Okay.
And you know, I had four brothers who we had inbuilt competitiveness, which really got us going. I don't know where it came from, but it's interesting that all my brothers have been hugely successful also. But people have inspired me. Of course, Peter Gauci, who founded Swiss Bell Hotel and who ran the Peninsula for years, he was an amazing inspiration. But people like Adrian Zacher,
Yes.
amazing. I was in partnership with him at some stage. He's an amazing, inspirational guy. But inspiration comes from many people. It comes from your teachers. It comes from university lecturers. It comes from politicians you've met. You know, I met a lot of politicians when I was in my university days, younger days, and my political connections. These days, you don't even want to meet politicians because, you know, they are not very exciting at all, are they? Well,
No.
not very inspirational. They're probably exciting, but not inspirational.
Yep. Yep.
So it's a whole build up, but you know, inspiration also comes off each other in a team,
Yes.
in a team. Yeah.
I love that. And I think to your point, it starts in those early years with your parents. That's great. Gavin, is there a particular skill that you have or a hobby that not many people would know? We obviously know about award-winning dairy farm. Have you got any special talent or skill that people don't really know about?
Well, that's a good question. You should ask my family. They'd probably say there's zero talent. I grew up in a musical family. Sure, I was at my university days. I helped pay my school university fees by playing in a pop band
Oh, wow. Okay.
when I had longer hair and had real eyebrows and things. Yeah, and I grew up in the greatest musical time in the world. So I love music.
Yep.
Okay, there's no music in the world that can beat the Beatle era, and today it's not quite the same, although Taylor Swift is turning things around.
And the economy as well.
And oh, they wouldn't let her into New Zealand because they couldn't find a venue, you know.
Oh, really?
In New Zealand, that's how stupid they are, okay?
You know, thinking about that, that's obviously great from an Australian point of view because obviously anybody who wanted to see her came over to either to Melbourne or Sydney, and
Yeah.
our hotel industry benefited as a result. That's interesting. Gavin, a question: what is the best piece of advice you've ever received, and who is that from, and why was it so important?
Well, it's probably our company is very powerful in Indonesia. I was helped in Indonesia by a guy called Mr. Chaputra, Pachi Chaputra. Amazing guy. And that's how he started off as our partner there, and unfortunately died 3 or 4 years ago. But he was amazing. And I can remember him saying to me, satisfaction is a disease. If you ever become satisfied, then you die.
Yep.
And so I've turned that around. You'll hear I often say to my people, I'm always happy, but I'm never satisfied.
Interesting.
So that's probably the greatest piece of advice,
Yep.
original advice from a hugely successful businessman in Indonesia.
I like that. And I like the way you've interpreted it. You're often happy, but never satisfied. We can always do better.
Sure,
Yeah.
satisfaction does not to be confused with happiness, but you can always do better.
Yep. We're going to talk now a little bit about obviously the industry in general, because I'm a self-confessed geek. We will probably have a couple of questions regarding sort of technology, nothing too technical, more in relation to technology and how it's now being used, hopefully to enhance the guest experience. COVID or the pandemic had a big impact to play on sort of that change really in the importance of technology. And I think it changed guests as well. But the very first question, Gavin, is there an emerging trend in the industry? And it could be makes you either excited or nervous.
Yes, COVID had a huge impact, but the industry is growing like crazy.
Mm.
The impersonalization of the industry makes me nervous
Yep.
because we all want people. Everybody wants people. Everybody is lonely. Everyone's looking for somebody. And if you take the people out of the industry will die.
Yep.
Well, you know, there's all these special hotels or these pod hotels, but no, people are important. You know, doing away with front office. Why? Why can't you talk to somebody?
Mm.
So the people in the industry is what's going to keep it going. And of course, we are the only industry in the world now that's employing people. Everything else is going to have robots. Robots will not take over the hotel industry. We just have to think of how to be friendly to people, how to make people appreciated, how to love people.
Yep.
The mobile phone is killing that a bit. Everybody goes to a hotel. The hotels you remember are people experiences. You can't build a hotel, you have to make a hotel. Anybody can build a hotel, but not many people can make a hotel.
Yep. No, that's a great point. And I think, as we picked up on before, I think we are a people industry, and I think we always will be. I echo your point on robots, although I've have a role to play in that. The robots that we're seeing at the moment, behind the scenes robots, so they're doing things like, you know, vacuuming ballrooms and vacuuming corridors, which are not people facing positions. You know, they've been used
Yes.
as a tool to really, they're being used as a tool to free up a staff member's time, so that a staff member can probably do something that's more guest facing. And I think we're seeing that in the front office as well, where people are given alternative methods to check in, like allowing them to check in before they arrive. They still present to the front desk normally, but the paperwork aspect is done. And now it's just a matter of face-to-face actual greeting and welcome. Can I tell you about the property? Here's your key. Rather than before, and it took me a while to convince a lot of hoteliers, before it was about you get there and the receptionist would ask for your credit card, etc. And then they'd spend 3 or 4 minutes keying information into their computer system. There really wasn't that actual people contact. Whereas I think if we use technology correctly, we can keep the people contact and we can actually enhance it. We can intensify that face-to-face contact.
As I say, it's the only industry which is employing people.
Yeah.
My 1,500 cow dairy farm only has 5 people working it. 5.
Wow.
Technology is done there, yes.
Yep. So those people are herding the cows in and out, or even automated now?
It's even automated.
Wow. There you go. It is pretty scary how far technology can go. Talking about technology, I mean, obviously you've been in the industry, as you said, since the 70s, and that was probably even pre-computers.
I designed the first computer system for the Hong Kong hotel in 1976.
Wow.
We started computerizing the back office and the accounting systems. And of course, the computer was like a wardrobe. It was so big, huge in those days.
Being an IBM or something, AS400 or a...
It was a data point from America.
Data point, okay.
And we had a system specially written for it.
Yep.
And it was hugely successful. But now there's more power in your mobile phone.
That's true. I had the privilege of going to see, was in Houston a couple of years ago, and went to the Space Center, and you look at the rocket that took the man to the moon, and it's like lifting up an old Holden. It's just
absolutely
surprising how it was able to do that, because it really appears to be not much in the way of technology in there at all. Given your experience, what is one of the biggest learnings you've had around technology?
Well, we all know garbage in, garbage out. It does not solve good brains. It does not necessarily solve problems. One of the biggest problems I've been with my financial background, everybody who does it all on computer believe that the computer is right.
Yes.
And of course, I will get my calculator and I'll check the computer.
Yep.
So often, the programs, algorithms are wrong.
Yep.
Come out, and of course, I'm trained to understand what the bottom number should be.
Yes.
And so these days, because of computers, people have no idea what the bottom number is.
Yep.
Be, and you end up with some crazy reports. So that is the biggest thing to learn from computing. It's an aid to be used.
Yep.
But you've got to keep the brain going.
That's a great point. And I think, unfortunately, I think it was, we talked about Patrick Griffin before, but he mentioned when he was at the Observatory Hotel in Sydney and they lost the point of sale one afternoon or one evening, and the staff were like, well, what do we do? And, how do we take orders? And he got out some paper and some pens and he's like, you write it down. And they're like, what? It was incomprehensible how they could actually do their job without computers at that point in time. So
yeah,
that's an issue. We become reliant upon technology, and somebody mentioned it before that the GPS technology is quite similar, and there have been many people that have, driven off the road into lakes because they trusted the GPS more than their eyes, I suppose.
It's just understanding where you're going. But the biggest problem I have now is to teach my people to talk to me on the phone. All my emails come in and I have it all compartmentalized for different people, call them up and go through their emails. Otherwise, all I'm doing is sending emails backwards and forwards. And emailing is probably the destruction of proactive management.
It's a good point, isn't it? It goes to that aspect we talked about, it's that lack of personalization and even thinking, because you sometimes get emails from people and it's obvious that it was just I've got to get this out of my inbox. I'll draft a quick reply. And there's not a lot of thought gone into that, unfortunately.
And very seldom do I get an email that I can make a decision from. They're not logical and lacks information.
Isn't that interesting?
And people won't make a conclusion for you.
Yep.
to review.
So you're saying then that obviously time on the telephone or time on a Zoom call or a Teams call is critical. It's that personal contact again that actually allows you to get the information you need to make a decision.
And also a lot of communication is not the spoken word too. So you see reactions behaving themselves.
Yep.
You can see how they leverage off each other. That's why working from home is not a way for the hotel industry.
Yep.
During COVID, I had a general manager ring up and said, I'm working from home this week. I said, how can a general manager work from home?
It becomes a little bit difficult, particularly if you're as a general manager. I think part of your role is obviously, to be in the lobby of a morning and to experience your guests and let your guests see you, and also be there for your staff.
Absolutely.
Some of the best general managers are the ones that are very aware that the restaurant is currently under the hammer, and they get in there and it's like, well, what can I do to help? And that rolling the sleeves up attitude is what engenders your staff to and actually allows them to respect you. Interesting. I think it's not as common as it used to be, that hands-on approach. Speaking about technology further, then, is there a technology that you're deploying within Swissbell at the moment to sort of enhance the guest experience?
We communication, but the reservation system is the exciting part of technology.
Yep.
That allows a company like me to go from 3 hotels in 2000 to 135 now, because the world is our oyster. We've got communication with the whole world. Before, we could not even compete with the big companies. Now we can.
Yep.
And so that is perhaps the single most important development in technology. The OTAs, who we all love to hate with their big fees, but it's so powerful. So the guests can choose where they want to stay. They can check out your comments from other guests. They know what your rating is on GRI, and that's how they run things. And that gets back to, they find out how you behave towards a guest. So that, to me, is the most exciting part.
Yep.
Computers, accounting, databases, all this sort of thing is pretty simple stuff.
And it's the guest facing component, as you said. So it's the fact that you deliver great service gets fed back via the reviews, and then that encourages more guests to obviously book at your property. Yeah.
Yeah. But of course, we need it for energy control. We've got to become more environmentally friendly. That's where technology is going to be a huge, huge help.
Yeah, I think we've still got a long way to go. Certainly, I know in the Australian market, there's probably 80% of the properties really don't have any form of in-room energy management. And not only is it socially responsible, but it's fiscally responsible as well, because there's a lot of energy being wasted. Particularly, I've seen it's getting a little bit better now, but if a guest would check out on a Friday, for example, and leave the air conditioning on, and the hotel didn't have enough staff to actually clean the room, it could be left for a couple of days until Monday, for example, where the air conditioning is just going for no particular reason, and that's all money.
Money and wasted energy, wasting resources.
Exactly right.
You can't get back.
You can't. No, that's it. If we look ahead a little bit, Gavin, as an industry, where do you think we will be in 5 years? What will it look like? Will it be dramatically different? And if you've got any advice on sort of for fellow hoteliers on how to prepare for what it might look like.
The most exciting thing in 50 years is that everybody can afford to go to a hotel.
Yep.
50 years ago, like the airline industry, only the rich people could. But everybody can afford to go to a hotel. Everybody has a holiday, especially if they get down to a 3-day week. So the hotel industry has got a huge, huge future. We just have to make sure we deliver the product efficiently and also at the right cost structure. You can't just keep charging for putting the price up and saying, well, it's inflation. You've got to do value for money. So the future is very, very secure. And as I said before, it's the only industry which is employing people.
Yep.
And people are traveling a lot more. It's interesting. There's not a lot of talk about the carbon footprint of airplanes, is there?
No, or cruise ships.
And they are incredible. They're growing like crazy.
Yep.
Okay, they're much more efficient, but still there's a big question mark there. So yeah, the future is very, very exciting and secure.
It is. It is. And I think we've seen as we've come out of the pandemic that people love to travel. And when they were sort of locked up, as soon as they got out, it's like, well, where can we go? What can we do? And one of my other guests, I think it was Simon McGrath, sort of said quite rightly that, people now, and I think it's that part of that younger generation, are very experience focused. So they'll put off buying a house, they'll put off doing something. Instead, they will travel and they'll go and have an experience. And the number of experiences that we have,
Yes,
these days has increased as well.
we have to make sure we don't become boring. If we want to, we have to be interesting. I mean, look at George Street in Sydney.
Yep.
Amazing. The train system. But look at all the restaurants. They're all interesting, all different types. And it's fun sitting on the streets, just enjoying people.
Yep. People watching.
Absolutely.
And is there a particular hotel? I mean, we're starting to see now, obviously, got the big box hotels, your Marriotts and your Holiday Inns and your Novotels, and there's a whole genre of boutique lifestyle hotels. Is there a market for both? I mean, will it be the business traveler that wants to stay in the Hilton downtown when they're on business, and then to stay in a more boutique property at, thinking about Sydney, at Coogee or something at a, you think there's a market for both and it will continue to grow?
Yes, because each day of the week we're a different person. During the week we're a business person, and the weekend we're family or fun people.
Yep.
And so boutique hotels have got a lot of future.
Mm.
They're sprouting everywhere. We've just developed a new brand called Maua, which we've opened on Nusa Penida Island off Bali. And it's just from the day it started, it just took off because it was unique. It was on top, overlooking an amazing bay and the sea, and it's an experience. And so we're finding that people do want an experience. They don't want to pay over the moon for it, but they will pay for value. They'll pay for value. You must deliver value.
And on that point, I mean, it's only just something that's occurred to me. I mean, there's less talk these days in our industry about Airbnb as a competitor. I mean, there were a couple of years ago, there was always talk about Airbnb. If I'm not wrong, what we're seeing now is that hotels can offer a better experience. And I think it's the fact that hotels come with people that an Airbnb doesn't. I've stayed in Airbnbs in Europe and on a trip to Canada. It's very isolating, particularly if you are traveling alone in an Airbnb. Whereas in a hotel, you feel you've got that sense of security because there are always people around.
Yeah, security is very important, and professionalism. Yeah, I've stayed in Airbnbs. It's amazing they have not indented the hotel industry, but it's just been another part of it. I am not comfortable in staying in somebody else's house. That's the biggest problem I had. And you just weren't too sure about the cleanliness and the comfort. And whereas a hotel, it's changed every day. So I think Airbnb will have its place, but it's not going to affect the hotel industry greatly.
Yeah.
It's another market segment.
Yes. Yes. No, that's a good point. Gavin, before we wrap up, I've got one final question I always like to ask, and that's in relation to somebody who's probably just starting their career in hospitality or maybe even just looking. Some of us, they might be working in hospitality whilst they're doing a degree in someone else. Simon Wan that we talked about, classic example. He was doing his business degree in Hong Kong, and via his cousin, he got a job in room service, and then he never looked back. He never completed his degree, and the industry just became his life. Have you got any advice for somebody who's looking at our industry as a career?
The key thing is it is a career.
Yep.
It's an exciting industry. It's hard work to start. You can get fast promotion. If you show talent, you'll get very fast promotion. You must be patient and not try and think you're a general manager by the time you're 25.
Yep.
And really stick at it. Take the good with the bad, if you like.
Mm.
But it's a very exciting industry, and it's multidimensional.
Yep.
Because you got boutique hotels to resorts to city hotels, and the world's your oyster. Banks employ hotel school students now. Because they want people who've got people skills.
Interesting. Okay.
With my hotel schools, only 50 or 60% ended up in hotels.
Really? Okay.
They all ended up in different professions
Yep.
because it's a people skilled profession, and that's what people need.
Yeah, it is. And that's been loud and clear as we've been talking today. You know, the
Yep.
industry is a people industry and always will continue to be. And it's, as you said, it's the only industry that's employing people. There's lots of growth, you know, that it's exciting times ahead, I think, for our industry.
But they always must keep learning. The biggest issue is that people change their habits or keep learning about different ways of doing things
Yep.
and not think they know everything. And the customer and the guest are always right,
Yep.
whether they like it or not.
That's true. I love that. Gavin, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today.
That's a pleasure talking to you. And I'm sitting here in Hong Kong, which is my favorite city in the world. I've spent most of my business life ready to go off to HiCap and hear some of the brains of the industry.
I love it. And tell us a little bit about obviously your background, because as you said, that is your farm. You're going to be there this weekend.
Mainly, I'm taking some guests down there. I have a country house down there also. But, the farm is a business, and I've young farmers running it. It's environmentally friendly. I had King Charles there 3 years ago looking at the way we do our environmental management. I have prime ministers visiting it because it's sort of a show farm.
Yep.
It's been in my family for 5 generations, 6 generations. It only started off with 50 cows. We have to get back to nature. We have to understand nature. We have to understand where food comes from. We've got to respect our environment. All very important things.
And do you find that's a good balance to sort of the day-to-day, you know, hotel world, not so much hands-on, but as you said, getting back to nature is,
Well, as I tell people, I love my cows. They're always happy,
yep.
always happy. They
Never
never
satisfied though.
they never argue. They're always at work every day, every day.
That's true. Always producing. That's
Always
very true.
producing.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But yeah, the land and the countryside is a beautiful environment.
And one of the most beautiful parts of the world. Gavin, thank you so much for your time. I really
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
My pleasure.